All right, welcome everyone to Coach G Live, the monthly free workshop that I give because I genuinely believe that everyone deserves access to expertise to improve their mental and emotional health. So once a month, I host a free live workshop on a topic that is relevant. And this month's topic is disagreeing productively. And that's what we're going to cover. In case we haven't met before, gbemi, or Coach G, as my clients like to call me. I'm a psychotherapist. I'm dually licensed as a licensed professional counselor and licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of Texas. I offer my services as a therapist to clients who live in Texas. If you live outside of Texas, the service that I offer is coaching. Right. And I have a burning desire to fill the gap that has been created by limited access to mental and emotional health support. So it is my desire that more people have access to the knowledge that can help their lives improve. And so I spend a lot of time sharing resources, free resources, making videos, and just trying to put the information out there, because what we don't know, we don't know. And when we know, it can improve our outcomes and change our lives. So this monthly free workshop is one of those things that I do. I also try to post on social a lot. We have a YouTube channel where we're constantly trying to post resources because, again, it's my desire to be as helpful as I can be with the expertise that I have, knowing that I do have a full caseload of clients who can afford to pay for my work. But what about the people who cannot afford it? It's why I do what I do. So in my private practice called Untangle Together, we do the very important and essential work of helping determined people like you work through life's twists and turns so we can get unstuck from old patterns and become the best version of ourselves that we desire and deserve to be. It is a privilege that you allow me to support you on your journey for improved mental and emotional health outcomes, and I'm glad that you are here. Thank you. All right, so today we're going to be talking about disagreeing productively. So we're going to be talking about conflict. We're going to explore it a little bit, why it's happening, and then we'll talk about the implications, the real life implications to you, and then we'll talk about some solutions, and I will give you immediately actionable steps and some tips that can help you navigate complex solutions. I'll take some questions and answers, and then we'll take it from there. All right. So conflict. Let's talk about conflict a little bit. The reason it exists, why it does, and how it impacts us. And this is the place where I'm asking a reflection question first. I'm asking you to please share your feedback in the chat so that I can help to explore what some of your experiences are, so that I'm not assuming that I know better than you what your actual lived experience is. So I want you to think back about a very recent conversation that you've had, a very specific one. So keep that conversation in mind, right? And I want you to think about how that conversation went, or how your conversations with the people that you care about generally tend to go. Did you get the other party to change their mind? Or did things get messy with bruised feelings? Were insults traded? Did you feel more connected after the conversation or less? Was there defensiveness on your part or the part of the other party? I'm asking you to please reflect and share your experience that you feel comfortable sharing with. Did you like how the conversation went? What are some of your lived experiences when it comes to dealing with conflict? I'm really curious and I would like to learn. Anyone? I tend to not have them at all. I have them in my head, resolve it, and move on. Thank you. This is a really honest one, and I'm glad that you're sharing with us, because it is true that For some of us, the way that we deal with conflict is to not have a conversation at all, like completely avoid the topic, right? And then just have the conversation with oneself, right? I'm curious, tell us or tell me a little bit about how you like the outcome of that. Do you like the outcome? Are you satisfied with that method of dealing with conflict? How does it leave you feeling?
I'm sorry, can I speak or do I just have time?
Yeah, go ahead, but because you know it's recorded, right? So that means that you're giving me permission to publish it. So yes, please speak.
Okay, fine. Not necessarily. So what tends to happen with that kind of thing is that somebody does something persistently, and then because I resolve it in my head, then one day they do something that's seemingly very little, and then it looks like I'm blowing it out of proportion, but it's just a backlog of things that I haven't resolved with them or I haven't spoken to them about, but I did it in my head. So I'm not addressing the one that I'm going to address based on that one is that one in addition to other things. And to them, it's just that small thing. It's not an effective method, and I do know that, but yeah.
Thank you, Damilola. I really appreciate your honesty. It's refreshing because you're absolutely correct. If we don't have the tools to deal with something immediately, or maybe we choose not to deal with it in that moment, what's going to happen is that it's going to pile up. And when one day something seemingly small is going to happen and boom, right? Or if something unrelated happens, we then use that opportunity to talk about all the past things that had happened. There's a word for that in my work, and it's called kitchen sinking, where one event happens, and in that argument, we throw the whole kitchen sink, at the person instead of addressing the one issue because that may have piled up. And you're right, it may not be an effective way of dealing with conflict because how does it leave you feeling after? Do you feel more connected or less connected? These are the questions. I'm still monitoring the chat, so you'll leave your own experiences there and we'll get to them, okay? But let's keep it moving. I think it's important to clarify at this point in the conversation that there are levels of relationships. So if you think your partner, like your romantic partner, a sibling, a parent, or a child in a familial relationship, the skills or the tools that you use to navigate conflict with them will be different from the skills and the tools you use in relationships with friends or acquaintances or co-workers or with strangers on social or neighbors. Not everyone gets the same treatment. So to be clear, it is important to establish as we carry on with this conversation that the rules that you use, your guidelines, or the tools that you use in communicating with people will be different depending on the level of the relationship. Because it is often the case that someone would have made a general guideline about relationships with friends or say acquaintances, right? And then they're trying to apply that rule or guideline to a relationship with a parent, a relationship with a romantic partner. Do you think it is the case that that will work out? What do you guys think? Applying the rules that we use in our relationships with co-workers, for example, with the rules that we use in a relationship with a sibling, right? Or the rules that you use in a relationship with strangers on the internet, will they automatically apply to your relationship with your superior at work? What do you guys think? No, it will not, right? Yeah, no. And you guys are absolutely correct. The guidelines that we make for relationships have to have levels. So when we are making guidelines for a relationship with a romantic partner of how to resolve conflict with them, to say, you know what, I'm going to have a conversation with this person about how I'm feeling. I'm not going to have conversations about feelings with strangers on the internet. Are you going to use the same guidelines with maybe a neighbor who's annoying you because maybe they're parking their car behind yours and limiting your ability to leave? Are you using the same guidelines that you would if you're a parent, for example, with your child? In fact, are you using the exact same guidelines for conflict resolution with children of different ages? Or are there different parameters depending on that specific relationship? That's something that I would encourage you to think about as we have this conversation, because you can say, well, why should I care? The level of the relationship or the quality of that relationship or what the relationship might mean to you will definitely determine the tools that you are using, which means that these parameters don't apply in every scenario, right? So you have to assess if you want to have a conversation about feelings. So for example, let's take a relationship where the balance of power is skewed, right? If you're having a relationship with somebody where the balance of power is skewed in your favor, so for example, I'm having a conversation with my teenage son, right? The nature of that relationship means that the tools I use will be different. So, for example, with my teenage son, I have a duty to teach, to model what appropriate responding looks like, to hold them accountable for their behavior, and to determine and deliver the consequences as I deem appropriate for inappropriate behavior. It will then mean that, for example, if my child speaks to me disrespectfully and I want to address that behavior, the way I would first take a deep breath and send oxygen to my brain so I can make a helpful choice, and then address and correct that behavior specifically, will be based on the parameters that exist in that relationship, right? If I am talking to a teenage stranger on the internet, who I do not owe the exact same duty as I owe my son, I am allowed to use a different set of parameters. So, for example, I can block a stranger on the internet. I can piss them off as I can the appropriate behavior. I'm not cursing the child out. Nor am I blocking them because I'm responsible for the duty of modeling appropriate responding. In the same instance, if I am working with somebody who is a service provider, right, that I owe a duty of respect as I owe all human beings. However, I am finding their service to be inappropriate or I'm dissatisfied with them, while I owe them a duty to be respectful, I also owe them a duty of honesty to let them know that what they're doing isn't working for me and I do not find it acceptable. If we are not clear about these parameters, we'll be trying to apply the same rule book and guideline that we are using for somebody that we cannot fire. So, for example, a sibling or a parent or a child, depending on the nature of the relationship, and somebody that we need to fire to say, look, I like you, but I don't need your services anymore. So each relationship will have different parameters. And to be clear, in instances where there are abuse or inappropriate behavior, where there is harm to a party, right, the rules can also differ. All of this to say that there are no blanket rules. So as you listen to me, I want you to be aware that relationships are complex and there are nuances, and it is possible for one example to not apply in every situation. So we have to be careful to not take a rule that applies in one specific scenario and try to overgeneralize it across scenarios. Are we clear about that? Like the comments in the chat, no, I don't believe strangers owe you any duty of care regarding your feelings. Absolutely, I will curse you, right? Because first of all, who are you and who do you think you are? And the only reason you can talk to me is because you can find me. So you're chopping a block, you can go and talk to the wall, right? In the way that I would not treat my romantic partner, for example, because I owe different levels of care to different people. Great, let's move on. So let's come to the bottom line of it, is that conflict is unavoidable. And peopling, which is what the term I generally like to use for relationships in general, once you're interacting with other people, peopling is hard. You're not having difficulty with conflict or with communication or with peopling because you are a bad person. You are having a hard time because dealing with others is difficult. You do not come factory fitted with the skills that we need to people. Those skills are learned, right? And conflict is unavoidable. So the idea that if I like this person and this person likes me, then we should be getting along and we shouldn't have any conflict. That idea in and of itself can be the reason why we are having such a difficult time, because we are expecting conflict not to happen, perhaps because we like each other. Are we clear? The expectation that there wouldn't be conflict can in and of itself be impeding our ability to deal with the conflict because we think that the conflict should not occur. So, for example, in a familial relationship, so let's say parent and child. So I often work with adult children who are having a hard time dealing with their adult parents, right? It is unavoidable that there will be conflict as you become an adult who is trying to relate with your parents. So unavoidable. So the story that we tell ourselves is, if I had a good family, we wouldn't have this problem. Or if I had a good marriage, we wouldn't be disagreeing about this topic. Or if my child was a good child, they would completely and automatically accept my ideas and not resist them. If this was a good boss, we wouldn't have any conflict. Or if this was a good employee, there wouldn't be any problems. How is that idea affecting how we approach conflict? What do you guys think? The idea that the conflict is not supposed to be there in the first place. Could it be that that is messing with us? What do you guys think? I really would like to hear your thoughts. Yes, it is. Yeah, so the idea that there wouldn't be conflict can be messing with us. Yes, it is, as there will always be conflict. Definitely for me. Thank you, guys. I believe for so long that if I like people, we shouldn't have conflicts. You teach why are we disagreeing? Thank you. I like this comment as well. Because you are viewing conflict as something that shouldn't happen. That core belief in and of itself is messing with us. Because when conflict occurs, rather than view it as an unavoidable part of people living, we view it as something that shouldn't be happening. So we are treating the existence of conflict as a problem, and perhaps ditching relationships or abandoning people because we think if we are good together, then why aren't we agreeing? So if you've not learned anything from me so far, if you take nothing away from this session, please take with you the knowledge that helps you challenge that idea when conflict comes up, that says to you, this shouldn't be happening in the first place. I'm encouraging you to challenge that core belief that says, well, there shouldn't be conflict. There will be conflict. Conflict is an unavoidable part of relating with others, especially people we care about. So listen and listen good. If somebody says, we've been together for 5 years and we've never had any disagreement, it is my personal opinion that that is a red flag. I'm curious about why you would think that that would be the case. What is the with somebody saying, we've been together for years and we've never disagreed? Doesn't that sound like something to brag about? Doesn't that mean you guys are really good together? We never disagree. We are always on the same page. What's the problem with that? Oh, I like this comment. Thank you, guys. I'm really glad you guys are participating. It means they're open to each other, right? And it means that they're keeping things under the carpet. Thank you, right? Someone is repressing their feelings. I think it's possible. Someone is probably bottling their feelings, right? Somebody is pretending, right? It sounds like they have been avoiding disagreements, or someone isn't speaking up. Thank you. You guys are awesome. That is the absolute truth, because it is two whole people, different ideas, different upbringing, different temperaments, different core beliefs, different education, different backgrounds, we're different. And so the process of people or connecting or spending time together as we develop our relationships, it will mean that we have different ideas. So what do we do when these differences occur is the most important question than why do we even have differences, right? So what then becomes important for us is to recognize, I like this quote, that's why I put it here. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the ability to cope with it. So what I want to gift you today are tools that can help you deal with conflict that is unavoidable, rather than say conflict shouldn't be existing, in the first place. So what do we do with our nearest and dearest, right? Because like we said prior, there are levels to relationships. You can block people or ghost them, right? You can stop talking to people. You can just refuse to pick up their calls, right? However, what do you do with the levels of relationship where a person is actually really close and the relationship is important to you and valuable to you, but there's discomfort surrounding the problem? Perhaps the question isn't how not to have conflict, is how do we maintain the relationships that matter? How do we connect with each other amid the dispute? Not without the dispute, but in the midst of that dispute, especially when our differences seem so unabridgeable, right? That's the big question. And I want you to listen carefully. If your goal in conflict is to achieve victory and to defeat the other side and to win, then that will be your focus. And you can definitely achieve victory. For example, when I was in secondary school, I was in the debate club. When you go to a debate club, you don't get to get along with other people. You are going there to win. So you mention your points, you wrote them out. In fact, you are ready for the rebuttal, right? Because it used to happen back in the day was you would have, like, I think 2 or 3 minutes to say your own point. Then the other party will give their own points. Then you come back for another 2 minutes of, for the points that the other party made, right? So I gained a lot of experience in the debate club. In fact, I think we won 2nd place for like a Lagos State competition or something, and I was really, really pleased with myself, right? Because I helped my school win. Do you think that being a debater helps me come to conversations with my points marshaled, right? Ready to give you articulated points for your own point, right? For your corresponding views, or your corresponding views for your views, right? Do you think I will be good at winning? What do you guys think? If I have debating, I know how to marshal my points, right? Because my goal is victory. What do you think will be going on with me? Do you think I will be doing a lot of winning? I'm curious about what you guys think. This answer, thank you. Yes, we'll be winning, but the people that I care about will resent me. Exactly. So I'm not asking you not to be a winner, but I can tell you from personal experience, as somebody who prized winning, that attitude was messing with my relationships because I'm then as them being the opposite, right? Them being the opposing party. So I'm approaching conversations as a combatant and saying we fight to finish, right? I like this other comment. Lots of winning, but I'm not sure there will be proper resolution. Boom. Thank you. Thank you. I think that I'm on this session with people who are emotionally intelligent and have experience in what I'm talking about. Thank you. I'm not sure there will be proper resolution because we will be listening to win and not resolve. Thank you. The winning mentality suggests that there's a superior party who will win and there's now a loser. And that doesn't work our relationships with our nearest and dearest. It can make you, it can be good for other scenarios, like in a debating club. That's my opponent, and I'm here to get them and win the trophy, right? It can maybe even be good on social. You have won. You have said your points. You have called everybody names, and you have blocked all the haters. And you consider yourself the winner in that discussion. So maybe in some levels of relationships, right? Winning is great and being the combatant is great. You're really good at marshalling your points. Everybody keeps quiet when you speak because there's nothing else to be said. How does that work in our relationships with our nearest and dearest, though? Because now you've won, but are you connected? Do you have a good relationship? What are your goals for your life? The type of life and relationships that you want to build? Getting achieved? These are the important questions. So if your goal is connection, then your approach will be different. You want to figure out why the conflict exists in the first place and what is fueling it. The story we are telling ourselves that's making that conflict to persist. Why does it matter and what can cause it to end? So do you see the two different approaches? One of them says, look, I'm right, and I'm going to win this. The other one gets curious and says, why is this conflict existing in the first place? What's fueling it? What's the story that we are telling ourselves that's making it to persist? And why does it matter? So that we can find a resolution for the conflict. Think about it a little bit and tell me which of the, let's say on number 10 is the person who knows how to resolve, where the goal is the connection, right? That's number 10 all the way over here. Then number 1 all the way over here is the winner, who always wins, who makes their points, right? So there's big disconnection, but lots of feeling fulfilled for number 1. There's lots of connection and, seeing the other person's point of view on number 10. If you give an assessment of yourself, what number will you say you are from 1 to 10? Like right now, like your honest assessment. As a self-reported fact, what would you say? Are you feeling deeply connected? Thank you. I like the response number 5. Okay, that's fair, like half and half. I'm saying an 8. Okay, so lots of connection. I'd like to see more. Thanks, guys. hear you. Different levels, and that's okay. The good news, we usually like to say, thankfully, there's adult education, which means that if we don't have the skill now or the tool right now, then we don't have it. How do we do? Absolutely. And this is my delight to teach you so that you can move the needle. In the case though, that we feel that we have to trade winning for silence. Right? Because in this situation, you want to maintain a connection, and you feel that to maintain the connection, that means that you say nothing or you avoid the conversation. The question now becomes, does that get you the outcome that you want? Because if you remember what the poster for this session said, on one hand, should I say something, right? Or should I let it slide? What you will find is that if you always say something because you have the winner mindset, maybe there'll be disconnection with the other party, right? And the other party might be happy. But if you never say anything, you're going to feel dissatisfied and resentment is going to build up. So what we then have to learn how to do is to find what I like to call in my work the sweet spot in the middle, which is how you get to articulate and say something and speak your mind and express yourself and keep the connection and the relationship. That's what we need to learn how to do. Because if we always speak our minds and we don't know how to do so properly, we can alienate and disconnect from our nearest and dearest. If we speak our mind, the alienation and disconnection will come from the resentment that will build when we then throw the whole kitchen sink at them. So here is the solution, guys. I'm cutting straight to it. The first solution that we need to learn is that every time there's conflict, there are at least 2 levels of conflict. That argument or disagreement that is going on is always about more than one topic. The surface issue, which is what we are currently arguing and fighting about, there's an emotional conflict that is under that surface issue. What do you guys think? At least 2 levels of conflict. Level 1 is what you can see. So imagine that there's a ship on the waters and you see that iceberg. That iceberg that you see is the topic that we're arguing about. Underneath that iceberg, which is right now often causes ships to capsize because they're approaching that iceberg like it is only the thing they can see, there is a lot more going on. To get to conflict resolution, we have to be able to identify what the surface issue is and what is really going on under, right? Let me give you an example. If you meet a couple, I'm a couples therapist, so I see this all the time in my work. To be clear, I'm a therapist who goes to therapy as well. So that means I have my own issues that I'm going to go and resolve professionally. So this isn't from a point of view of look at what those people are going through. This is from a point of view of none of this is precluded from the universal human condition. If you are going through it is highly likely that I'm going through it too. I can relate and I'm going to get mine resolved as well. Okay? So not you guys, all of us. So let's say that a couple is arguing about, let's say one person wants another baby and the other doesn't. I want you guys to put in the chat what you think the surface issue is or what the underlying issue might be. Because when they're arguing and disagreeing about having another baby, there's a surface issue and there's another issue going on, right? So what do you guys think the top level conversation is that we're arguing about? What do you think the underlying issue might be? From what you've learned so far, or what you think maybe your personal experience is? Oops, what did I do? All right, there we go. What do you guys think? Surface issue, emotional conflict underneath. Thank you for the comments. Surface issue, having a baby. Underlying financial issues, childcare. Right? I'll give you some examples. So surface issue, baby. That's what it seems like we're arguing about. Underlying issue, another child will bankrupt us. So money, finances. You're prioritizing a child over my career. You know, we just moved to this new country. Look at everything that we are going through, and we are talking about wanting another child. These ones that we already have, are they not children? And you're talking about how you want another baby. This time that you know that I'm just about to start my training for a new career, right? Underlying issue, right? I'm frustrated about the reality from this conversation that you don't care about what I really want, and you continue to talk about what you want, right? Do you see how the surface issue can be a baby, but there's an underlying issue? The people who have learned to develop connection while also sharing about what they want and not avoiding conflict, they are the ones that have learned to identify the not just the surface issue, but the underlying issue for themselves and for the other party. Let me know if you want me to go over that again, or if you guys get it, give me a thumbs up, or if you want me to repeat it, I'll be happy to repeat it. Please repeat it, sure thing. I got you. Oh, I like this comment. How come I missed it? Surface level, another child, underlying issue, one person is getting the shorter end of the stick. Exactly. Concerns about unfairness, right? And then, okay, I see a comment here as well. I agree that there are levels usually, but how do you get to what's underneath the conversation? Don't worry. Right, so I'm going to repeat it. I said that the people who have become successful at conflict resolution are those who have learned to not just identify the surface issue, but the underlying issue for themselves and the body. I'm telling you, if you want to get better conflict resolution, the hack, which is what I'm teaching you for free, which will change your life as you apply it, is to not just focus on the surface issue that you are arguing or disagreeing about. It is to identify what the underlying issue is for you and for the other party. Remember, this is existing within the parameters of a relationship where you both care about each other. I'm not talking about you caring about the underlying issue for random strangers or on the internet. The junction that refused to give you your change. I'm talking about relationships with your nearest and dearest. If a relationship is valuable to you and the connection is important to you, that you want to foster it, you have to be able to identify not just the surface issue, but the lot. Oh, my sound is cutting. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know why that is happening, and I honestly don't know what to do about it. What can I do? I don't know. Can you guys hear me clearly now? Maybe I'm moving around too much. I'm quite animated. Oh, it's better when I lean forward. How about now? You know, I'm not animated, so I'm always moving around. So does it sound clear now? And I'll make sure I stay in this fixed position.
Yes, it does sound clear now.
Okay, so I'll stay in this fixed position. I'll stop doing that dancing thing I'm doing. Thank you for letting me know. I appreciate the feedback. The audio is still cutting now. Should I disconnect my mic and just go without the mic? Maybe the mic isn't doing as great a job.
No, just go on.
Let's try it.
It's not terrible.
Okay, so where we are, maybe I should project my voice a little more.
I think it's more a hardware thing than your voice, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I can just turn the mic off and just, because I'm using a mic today because I got feedback that the audio hasn't been so great. So I'm trying the mic, and if it's not working great, so let's try turning off the mic. I'm just going to disconnect the whole thing. All right, let's.
Okay.
All right, can you guys hear me now?
Yes, better.
Okay. So I disconnected the whole mic thing, and we'll just go without the mic. Right, I accepted feedback and tried to make it better. Turns out that the thing I was trying, it didn't make things better. If anything, it made things work. So we moved.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So we I want to remove the one that's also like hanging over here so it doesn't keep distracting me. But yeah, where were we? Thank you guys. Feedback is really helpful because I really want to make this great for you guys. So thank you for letting me know. So this is an example of how communication helps in relationships, because you'll be there thinking that you're trying your best. Meanwhile, the other person can't hear you and they haven't said anything to you. Meanwhile, you're happy and proud of yourself that you used extra effort to do something nice for them or more. The whole time you're just suffering yourself for nothing. Can you see how life goes? Very good example of how that plays out. I really appreciate the feedback and thank you for letting me know. All right, so we move. We were clarifying the whole, the people who are great at resolving conflict are the ones who are great at identifying the surface issue and the what? And the underlying issue. Thank you, guys. You want to know the surface issue and the underlying issue. So quick self-assessment, and it's okay if you don't want to answer, but quick self-assessment. Do you think that you're great at identifying the surface issue and the underlying issue right now, like in your current lived reality? Oh, I appreciate the honesty. No, I'm not. Anyone else? Oh, I like this comment. For myself, yes, but not necessarily for the other person. Right, yeah. It might be possible to know the underlying issue for ourselves, but what if we're, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Oh, I like this comment. It's just beginning to get the hang of it for me. Great. Look, what we don't know, we don't know. And when we learn, we try and then we get better. Good job. Sometimes good, sometimes not so great. Yeah, I could be better. I like the framing of that, Dimeji. Like I have room. It's like when I tell my children, I have identified an area for growth. That's a way to present. You need to learn how to do this thing better. But I call it, I've identified an opportunity for growth. So I like that you're using that language for yourself, Dimeji. I like that. I could be better at it. Surface, yes. Underlying, no. Great. I always get caught up in proving my point. Not necessarily all the time. In the moment, the underlying issue, not right away. Not exactly. I have moments where I think about it. Sometimes I don't think about it. Great. And that's our reality, because if we don't know, we don't know. Like I usually say, thankfully, there's adult education. If we don't know something, it's like learning to drive or learning to swim, right? If nobody taught us, now we're adults. Are we going to continue talking about how the adults in our lives didn't model it to us or teach it to us? Or are we going to take responsibility for our learning now? so that we can how to get better at identifying what the underlying issue is, right? The emotional conflicts are sometimes nebulous, difficult to pin down. So if you're having a hard time identifying the underlying issue, not because you're a bad person or incompetent, it can be hard, and we have to learn how. The anger and the frustration and the disappointment that is driving the conflict beyond the possibility of compromise is inside those underlying feelings that we may not have been able to identify yet. So what's the solution? The main solution for conflict is to get both sides to express the emotions in the underlying issue, which is what tends to happen when people come to therapy, to couples therapy, right? Because I have the skills and the expertise to help people get to the underlying issue. So you get a couple in, and each person then gets to be able to not just about the surface issue, but the underlying issue. When they feel heard and have been able to identify the underlying issue, then we're on the path to conflict resolution, right? If you're able to express the emotions, the hurt, and the suspicion that is fueling the fight, that's when we're on the way to resolution. Each of us is sure that we're analytical and logical beings. We're not like all those people who it is emotion that is controlling them, right? However, that is not true. All of us are emotional, and when we get activated or dysregulated, when we feel unheard, when we feel cheated or unfairly treated, those emotions are heightened, and then it hijacks the entire conversations. The emotions that we are unable to identify and express are leaking out in other ways. Also, fighting makes us stressed and activated, right? Which makes resolution impossible. So we might be feeling furious or sad or upset or all kinds of feelings that are perfectly normal and natural feelings underneath. But because we haven't learned to identify or express them, right, we're now still stuck in conflict, and we're fighting about the surface issue, when what is going on with us is that perhaps we are scared about a potential outcome, but we have not been able to identify that for ourselves or to say it. So without discussing the emotions or getting to the underlying issue, we're just going to keep having the same argument over and over and over again. In fact, according to the Gottmans, I don't know if you're familiar with the work of John and Julie Gottman, but their work is pretty phenomenal. The research is solid, and I'm even certified up to level 2 in the Gottman's method of couples therapy. 69% of conflicts in relationships are unresolvable. That means that for every 3 things that you fight about, right, 2 out of those 3 things can never be resolved. So the issue is not to make the conflict go away, or how can we be a couple that never has a point of disagreement. The real issue is how can we learn to resolve conflicts and get to what is really going on, because you are going to find out that you are fighting about the same thing over and over again. It's just that it's presenting as a different surface level topic. So to be clear, talking about feelings doesn't solve everything. So like the baby, for example, there's no amount of conversation that can make both parties see eye to eye, right? One person wants a baby, the other person doesn't want a baby, point blank, period, right? There's no conversation that is now going to automatically make a win-win solution in that scenario. However, if we don't get to the underlying emotion, we just keep fighting over and over again about the surface issue without getting to what is this really about for you? When you say you absolutely don't want a baby, tell me a little bit about what it is that you're trying to avoid, or what it is that you want. So if you haven't learned anything today, please note that the better you get at moving past the surface issue, both for yourself and for the other party, if that's a relationship that you care about, the better you can get at conflict resolution. If there's nothing else you've learned today, you've learned that, and it is immediately actionable. Because when you feel yourself getting activated and dysregulated and sick and tired of this person that you're choosing to spend the rest of your life with, or if it's a parent-child relationship, how your parents just refuse to see your point, or how your sibling is just annoying and, you know, bad, or how if it is a relationship that matters to you, unlike other relationships where you can just walk away or ghost them or whatever, what is most helpful to you is to think beyond what the surface issue is to what the underlying issues are, and ask yourself or your own self, what is this really about for me? And figure it out or discover it, perhaps in conversation with the other party. When you can get both of yourselves talking at a level of emotion, what does this really mean to me? And I feel, then you're on the way to conflict resolution. This is what I always share with everyone. People living is hard because we are human. We're flawed, we're imperfect, and we're happening to others as they're happening to us. Knowing that we're not defective because we have things to work through is helpful. So be kind to yourself as you work on developing new skills and repairing the fractures that are bound to happen in the relationships that are important to you. So we'll do a quick Q&A. All other Q&As will go to hashtag Ask Coach G, but let's do a quick Q&A, and then we can wrap it up and go on to talk about the small group. Go ahead, guys. If you have a question, now's the time to ask it, and then we're going to wrap the recording up, and then I'll touch on other things off camera, and we can carry on and have ourselves a great day. Okay, I see a raised hand. I'll take that live question. Only one live question. So go ahead, Shay.
Thanks. My hands are really busy, so I can't type. So if in a relationship, maybe let's say a romantic relationship, for example, there's one person who is, getting better at identifying the surface issue and taking the time to peel the layers to identify the underlying issues. Now, how do you strike a conversation with the other party so that not that you have to take on the responsibility for helping them to get to that point, but how do you manage yourself in the process until they get to that point? Because that can be frustrating as well. You figured out your surface issues, you're able to articulate the underlying issues, and you're even trying to do a fine job of communicating those, but you're hitting a brick wall because the other party is not there yet. So how do you manage yourself? Because pretty much you can't control someone else, but you can control what happens to you, your outcomes, and all that jazz. Thank you.
That's a really great question. And I like that you asked it, because it's a commonly occurring question. What happens when I'm doing the work, trying to get better, learning to communicate, learning to resolve conflict, and the other party isn't? First of all, that's incredibly frustrating. The answer is in your question, though, which is the part where you mentioned that other people's behavior will always be outside of our control. So what eventually happens is that we have to figure out how to manage ourselves while dealing with the stage that other people are. And the first step, you've already answered it. Their behavior is outside of my control. I can't make them do the right thing. So you turn all that emotional energy towards yourself and say, what is the outcome that I want? And what is the most helpful way for me to achieve it, whether or not the other person is on board? What that simple mindset change does for us is that it changes the story from, when this person stops being like this, then I will be okay, to whether or not this person does what they're supposed to do, how do I get myself closer to the outcome that I want? Let me give you a really practical example. Let's say, for example, I have a partner who uses very specific language in communicating that I don't like. Let's say maybe they they talk to me in a way that is condescending, and I find that very offensive, right? I have to first acknowledge for myself that I find this behavior offensive or this language condescending, and this is how it makes me feel, right? Whether or not I choose to have a conversation with them about their language, I have to realize that I can't make somebody else stop talking to me how they choose, right? It has to start from, this is what I am going to do when they choose whatever behavior they choose. So for example, if I decide I'm going to create a boundary around communication, I will then say to myself, their behavior is outside of my control. When they choose to be disrespectful, this is what I am going to do about it. It also applies in relationships with parents. Let's say, for example, every time you pick up the phone to call, your parents, they make reference to a topic that you've told them that you no longer want to discuss. Creating a boundary around that does not mean saying, you must never talk to me about that ever again. Creating a boundary around it looks like saying, when you choose to speak like this, I will remove myself from the conversation. I will end the call because you are choosing to speak to me in a way that I no longer find acceptable. I hope that's helpful. And it looks very different in practice, because what if you're unable to remove yourself from that scenario? The point I'm trying to make, and which I hope you get, is that once you've come to the conclusion that other people's behavior will always be outside of your control, it changes the way you think from how can I make them do what I want to how can I manage myself regardless of what they do. So you then make your own guidelines for what is acceptable or not. Then you spend time effecting those boundaries around yourself. One very practical example of that is that if you think that their way of speaking is inappropriate, it means that you do not speak to them like that. So if, for example, they are condescending, you can say to your own self that once they condescend towards me, I will condescend towards them back, which is what makes us end up in the cycle of getting stuck, which in my work is called a gridlock. If you decide that condescending language is not acceptable, that means you refrain from using it and you make a plan prior to them being condescending towards you, that when they choose to be condescending, you are going to use your level voice, lower your voice a decibel and say, this is a script I teach my clients all the time and that I use in my real life. I'm not sure why you think it's okay to speak to me like that. However, I do not have to sit here and accept it. And you remove yourself from the scenario, right? You are not demanding and say, don't talk to me like that. Are you, whatever word you choose to use, right? You are holding yourself to the higher standard of better than condescending behavior, addressing it, refusing to accept it, and then making your own plan. Again, it's going to look different in practice for different relationships, but I hope this generic, example applies and that you find it helpful. A couple of resources that can be helpful. We did a boundaries workshop a couple months ago. You'll find it on YouTube. So go watch the boundaries one and the one that we did on communication last month. Anything else, you have to come to a session or maybe come to the small group one. I can help you workshop your unique situation. Thank you for attending the session today. If you want to attend the next live workshop, it's already set up. You can scan this QR code and you can find us on social, on Tangle Together, on Twitter and IG, and on YouTube where we post our resources, or in the resource library in the virtual village. If you have any questions, gbemi at untangledtogether.com. Thank you for attending, and I will see you later.